Yes, so good morning, everybody. So turning to our weather and climate, we're also running out of adjectives, unfortunately. We're hearing words such as unprecedented, catastrophic, historic, record-breaking, more and more to describe what we're seeing with the weather. We're now in October. This is after the historic peak of the Atlantic hurricane season. And yet today we're seeing all the reports about Hurricane Milton, which is posing an extremely serious threat to Florida, which obviously is a state which is still reeling from the devastation of Hurricane Helene less than 2 weeks ago. And Hurricane Helene caused a death toll of more than 160. Milton, according to the latest forecasts from the US National Hurricane Center, will likely make landfall in Florida Wednesday night, local time. The maximum sustained winds at the moment are 250 kilometers an hour, and this is a powerful Category 4. Milton sort of reached a Category 5 yesterday, and the National Hurricane Center is saying that, fluctuations in the strength are likely, but whatever, regardless, Milton, and I quote, is forecast to remain an extremely dangerous hurricane through landfall in Florida. As we've seen with a number of tropical cyclones recently, Milton intensified at an explosive rate. It was very, very fast. Again, this is an increasingly common occurrence. We saw it with Hurricane Beryl at the start of the year. We saw it with the major hurricane which hit Acapulco last year, that hurricanes suddenly go from tropical storm status to WMO, a major hurricane status in a matter of hours. According to the US National Hurricane Center, it was the third most rapid intensification in the Atlantic basin. Why? As we've said before, ocean heat is playing a role. Warm sea surface temperatures provide the energy that hurricane needs for growth. The deeper the heat, the more energy a storm can draw. In the Gulf of Mexico and Florida area, we are seeing very warm ocean waters at the moment. Another factor to bear in mind, Milton is a large hurricane. Hurricane force winds extend outwards up to 45 kilometers, 30 miles, and it's expected to grow in size. So that means its impacts will be expanded. It might weaken in intensity, but the impacts will be larger, a wider area. The US National Hurricane Center and the National Weather Service, obviously, who are both members of the World Meteorological Organization, are warning that a large area of destructive storm surge will occur along parts of the west coast of Florida, and that this is an extremely life-threatening situation. In the Tampa Bay area, which is quite a built-up area, the National Weather Service is predicting a storm surge of about 10 to 15 feet. That's huge. If you look at the illustrations, you compare that to a house size, it gets it in proportion, the danger and the risks of this hurricane. We're expecting also very, very heavy rainfall, which will exacerbate the situation. Important to bear in mind that this is the state of Florida, but the trajectory of Milton compared to Helene is different. Milton is going to cross Florida, whereas Helene sort of meandered upwards, through the Carolinas and got stuck there. Milton is following a similar track to Hurricane Ian, which caused devastation 2 years ago in Florida, and Ian also peaked as a Category 5. There are currently 3 hurricanes spinning in the Atlantic. Milton, we've just heard about. Leslie, somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic. And Kirk, which we in Europe are going to hear about in the next couple of days. Kirk is heading towards Europe from the US. It's currently a Category 1 status. It will weaken and become what in the meteorological community is called an extratropical cyclone or an ex-tropical cyclone. The forecast tracks have varied in the past couple of days. The latest forecast has that the major impacts will be in France, and Météo France is forecasting that Kirk will be a dangerous storm, wind gusts of up to 100 kilometers an hour and very, very heavy rainfall. That's it. Sorry, I will send you the notes after this. We were compiling it until I came on.
Yeah, pretty worrying situation, Jamie.
Hello, Claire. Thank you for that. Is there any way to interpret the decline from Category 5 to a Category 4? Is that indicative of anything in terms of the trend line? You mentioned that the swath of land that's going to be affected is clearly going to be broad, but in terms of the intensity, is there any way to sort of interpret the trend line? And then my second question is, of course, Milton here has started sort of in the western part of the Caribbean over, off of Mexico. I'm being naive here, but I always thought that the hurricanes traditionally would come from sort of the Atlantic side more. So is there anything unusual about that?
So in terms of the variation in intensity, there's all sorts of things that happen, so eye wall replacement, so it temporarily weakens, and as the National Hurricane Center has said, they do expect some fluctuations, but regardless, it will remain a very dangerous hurricane, and the trend that we are seeing is this trend towards, very rapid intensification. In terms of the tracks, I need to look at the historic tracks from the National Hurricane Center. I don't think there's anything exceptional about this track, but I will check. Just to give you an idea, we at the World Meteorological Organization, we work very, very closely with the weather forecasting community. There is one veteran US weather sort of hurricane presenter. His name is John Morales. He's been doing this for decades, and he actually broke down in tears yesterday making his regular report. He's so emotional about what he's seeing, and this is a guy who's seen dozens and dozens and dozens of hurricanes.
Yeah, it speaks about it. Nina.
Hi, Claire. The fact that these are happening so late in the season, do you think that is this sort of can we expect this to be like a new normal in terms of how these hurricanes are going to happen going forward?
I think the new normal is the abnormal. I think that's what we're learning. It has been an unusual season. So Hurricane Beryl, which was back in July, so quite early on in the season. That was record-breaking because it was the earliest Category 5 Atlantic hurricane on record. These are, very late Category 5 hurricanes. The historic peak tends to be late August, September because of the warm ocean waters. And as I said, the waters around Florida are still very, very warm. It remains to be seen. We have seen Category 5 hurricanes in October, so it's not the first one, and it certainly won't be the last.
Thank you very much. No more question in the room. Gabriela?
Thank you, Alessandra. Hi, Claire. Do you expect heavy rain or something in Mexico, in parts of Mexico? Could you talk about that?
Yes, I'm just looking at the latest forecast from the National Hurricane Center. So today, they're warning of damaging hurricane-force winds and life-threatening storm surge with destructive waves across portions of the northern coast of the Yucatan Peninsula. So I'm just trying to look at the map. So Yes, so Mexico will be impacted, but it seems to be, it seems to be on the edge. The main impacts are going to be in Florida.
Thank you very much, Claire. Oh, Maya.
Yes, thank you for taking my question, Alessandra. Hello, Claire. My question is related to the weather systems in the Amazon rainforest. If there is any research that has indicated that there is some relationship between these extreme weather events occurring at this time of the year and the Amazon rainforest fires.
I would have to check on that. I think our Secretary General Celeste Saulo, tried to answer questions yesterday on what's happening in the Amazon. I'm not aware immediately of a direct correlation, but having said that, most weather patterns are, there are lots of teleconnections, as we call them. But I would have to check and get back to you on that. I mean, this is related to the hurricane season rather than what's happening elsewhere with the climate.
Don't see any other hand for Claire. Oh, no, Maya has a follow-up.
Yes, thank you, Claire, for the clarification. And if we could follow up then on that. And also the question was related, but do you see also if there is an increase in the severity of this? I know it's the season and there are Category 5 hurricanes every once and then, but is there any indication also in the research looking at a 30-year period that the severity of the number of hurricanes that hit the Gulf Coast have increased in the last 30 years as a follow-up question?
Yeah, I mean, as we said in the World Meteorological Organization State Water Resources report that we released yesterday, because of climate change, the hydrological cycle is accelerating. It's becoming more erratic, spinning out of control, so to speak. So that means that we are seeing more intense rainfall, more extreme droughts. That's just in, that's just in general. A warmer atmosphere holds more moisture. So when it does rain, that rainfall, has a tendency to be heavier because of heat. Droughts are becoming, more intense. All of that was in the report yesterday. Because of sea level rise, we are seeing greater impacts from storm surge, which is a major hazard from tropical cyclones. And the research from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change indicates that whilst we will not necessarily see an increase in the overall number of tropical cyclones, we are likely to see an increase in the proportion of very intense tropical cyclones. And what we have seen, certainly this year, last year, is a tendency towards more rapid intensification.
Gabriela is asking if you can repeat the name of the anchor that broke on tears, speaking about Milton, the anchorman. Right.
Yes, sorry, the anchorman, I can send you his name in the chat. His name is John Morales. He actually made it onto the front page of the Bild newspaper in Germany today with the the title in German is "Weather Expert Battles with Tears," as he reads out the forecast. So his name is John Morales. He's very well known. He's very respected. He won a Lifetime Achievement Award last year, along with WMO Secretary General Celeste Saulo of the American Meteorological Society. So this is somebody he knows. He knows his stuff.
He knows what he's talking about. Maya, last follow-up.
Yes, thank you very much. The last question is related to the early warning systems, I've seen that for Helene, that the early warning systems were working quite well and people were able to move out of the danger zones. Is there anything that you can comment on in terms of early warning systems that are put in place by the U.S. government and the Hurricane Center in Miami in relation to Milton? Thank you.
The forecasts and the early warnings, as we saw with Helene, were excellent. They are excellent, very, very accurate, very precise. For Milton, what we're seeing is, the National Hurricane Center, the National Weather Service will be issuing the forecasts and the warnings, and then it's obviously for local authorities, for authorities in Florida to act on those, to issue the evacuation orders. It's not always easy. Roads are clogged. There's probably no more availability on flights. And what Professor Saulo said yesterday, that in the case of Helene, the warnings were there, but in many cases, because people had never experienced anything like it, they couldn't actually believe it, so they didn't act on those warnings. We're hoping that this will be different with Milton, and this particular area where it's meant to make landfall, that was hit by Hurricane Ian 2 years ago. So, we're hoping that the memories of Hurricane Ian and of Hurricane Helene will be fresh enough so that people do act on the warnings and evacuate or stay safe.